Hey everyone, welcome back to Lawyers, Mediators International show and podcast, where we talk about the law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Today, I have special guest Bonnie Artman Fox. She is back for, I guess, round two, a good year later since you were here before, Bonnie. So it's good to see you again back on the show to talk about conflict in the workplace, but conflict also amongst co-parents because there are so many similarities. And so it's just good to have you educate the audience, especially people, parents who are going through some kind of turmoil in their life. They might share a kid and they just want some answers. Also, to help educate mediators who may be watching this so that they can do their best work when trying to assist people to co-parent and resolve their differences. So, Bonnie, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. And thank you for the invitation to come back.
Yes, no, absolutely. And so I will start off by sharing my screen. Your website for people who may not know you is bonnieartmanfox.com. And so that's where folks can go to learn more about you. You're a speaker, you're a coach, you uh, are an author, and we'll get to your book in a second. But last time you were here, you discuss a lot of the work you do with leaders of corporations and big companies, but also just helping regular people, to resolve their differences. So you are the author of the book, How Did My Family Get in My Office? And when I had invited you the first time in 2025, it was this book's title that caught my attention because of the similarities between the workplace and the family. And there's a lot of dynamics that they share in common. And so, could you spend a little bit of time in the next couple minutes to just catch us up about who you are again and why you had written this book before we get into some of the questions for today?
Well, thank you. Yes, that question of how did my family get in my office was something I personally experienced way back at the beginning of my career. I found myself in a toxic work environment that was causing me upset stomachs, sleepless nights, anxiety that led me to therapy. Coaching wasn't a thing back then. And one of the first questions the therapist asked was, how was conflict handled in your upbringing? Which at the time didn't make sense to me because I was there for this work situation. And through a series of questions, I realized my family was in my office. And at that point, I had a choice to make. She said, well, have three options of what you may do here. You may leave because, yeah, I understand this is a really difficult work situation. The problem with that is that they'll take you with you wherever you go. The second option is you could stay and just endure because I know you love the work, or you could choose to stay and grow. And that's what I chose to do. I stayed in that work situation. I worked with the therapist along with a group therapy coaching experience and learned the interpersonal skills to learn how to speak up for myself and set boundaries and to be assertive and not take the bad behavior of this challenging work situation personally. And 18 months later, I was offered another position within the company with a significant raise and working for a great boss that I'm still in touch with to this day. So that experience really gave me not only the skills to deal with that work situation, it really laid the foundation of the work that I do today of helping people deal with difficult work situations and take personal responsibility for the part they play in how they show up and grow in their own personal and interpersonal skill development.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for that catch up. And folks can get the book where you go deeply into this. And also, we had uh, written about the book on my blog, elamipodcast.com, and people can go watch that video and read that blog post from April 2025, April 4th, 2025, so just about a year ago. if they want to learn more. And it was a really, really good, insightful conversation. And so thank you so much for it. So, talking about people dealing with their own personal issues in the workplace, you talk about how we develop conflict patterns by age 5 or 6. In
Mhm.
my mediation practice, whenever I'm helping people resolve their differences, I often see adults reverting back to those same childhood roles when they get under stress. So, how
Mhm.
can a mediator, how can someone like me help a people pleaser, find their voice if
Mhm.
people are going to just revert back to their childhood instincts?
Yes, yes, it's a great question. Thank you. Yes, by age 5 or 6, we learn how we're going to manage when things get tough, when there's tension, when there's conflict. And the imprints from our family aren't so much from what is said, it's what is modeled.
Yeah.
And with what we see in the family system of how other people respond. And we find ways as children to cope in order to stay safe when the environment isn't safe around us. One of the ways that we cope is through people pleasing. A way to diffuse tension, to help people get along, is to become a people pleaser. And it's really meant as intended as a way of not only self protection, because deep down inside, we're feeling very, very anxious because of all this tension or conflict in the home environment. And so that's the foundation of really all of our conflict styles is there are different ways that we self-protect.
Yeah.
Now, on to your question about the role as a mediator. I think of a mediator's role in two ways. First is to be an anchor to steady the turbulence in the family system. Because in those conflictual situations, especially during divorce, that there's finger pointing, there's blame, people aren't taking responsibility for the part they play and how the relationship got to that point. So, as a mediator, being that calming presence, that anchor is the first aspect of the mediator's role. The second is to be a compass and to provide direction of the big picture of how can the two of you, despite your differences, work together on behalf of your children or whoever is involved in the mediation. Those are the two roles that I see a mediator playing. And in specifically with the people pleaser, to
Mm.
be that anchor and encouraging that individual to give them confidence to speak up, to be assertive, and to know what's important to them. Because oftentimes people pleasers don't know what's important to them. They just go along to get along. And so
Yeah.
encouraging them to have a voice and setting boundaries and preparing them that when they do that, it's going to get rocky. It's going to be tense because the other party most likely isn't used to seeing the people pleaser be assertive, be firm and grounded in identifying what they want. So they're likely to get pushback. And as the mediator is to encourage them to have their voice and to stay grounded and steady. They have a right to speak up for what's important to them and what they want.
Yes, it makes me think, one of the things we do in mediations a whole lot is to be a conduit, to be somebody who will take information from one party and bring it to the other party so that it can be accepted in a way is accepted from a third person, the mediator, and not directly from the individual who they might be at odds with. For example, we might do caucus style mediation where we have the two people in two different rooms, and the mediator is a sort of diplomat who's going back and forth. And so a lot of times the their function is to be a good communicator, to make sure that this person's voice is captured accurately but then
Mhm,
present it in such a way so that the other person can accept it. They can hear
mhm,
it without shutting them down. Because the
mhm,
emotions are not going to be as intense because it's not the other person directly. So when you're talking about, helping a person find their voice, I can see that.
Yeah.
because a person who might be a people pleaser, they may feel bullied, they may feel
Yes.
timid, they may feel that they can't approach the other person and really speak out of their heart what they really want. But if you have a mediator who's in the middle, who can be trusted, who can be steady, who can be
Mhm.
even handed, I think, yeah, that's
Mhm.
how they can help that person grow a little bit of a backbone and convey what it is that they really want to say.
Yes, yes, and being that presence, gives the people pleaser the confidence they can do that, and to stay in the tension of doing something different than what maybe they're used to doing.
Correct. So we had talked about the term boss whisperer last time, probably over a year ago. And so, uh, first off, it would be great for you to just remind people, what that is,
Mhm.
because we know what dog whisperers are, but the boss whisperer, we kind of get it, but it would be great for you to just, before I get to the next question, can you remind us what that is?
Sure, sure. The Boss Whispering is a specialized coaching program to equip leaders who exhibit abrasive behavior, such as condescending, overreacting, public humiliation, belittling, to develop interpersonal skills, to develop emotional intelligence. And oftentimes, these are leaders who are highly competent. They are high revenue generators. They have expert knowledge that helps the company succeed. And yet, the way they interact with people creates havoc in the organization and on the culture that creates turnover, low morale, low productivity, because people are always on edge on how this leader is going to interact with them. So, the boss whispering is that specialized coaching to help these leaders turn around those negative perceptions about their leadership style and develop emotional intelligence.
Gotcha. So you have an 82% success rate in helping these abrasive leaders replace dominance with empathy. What
Mhm.
techniques from your leadership turnaround program can be used to help high conflict spouses realize that their behavior is actually hurting their chances and entering some kind of favorable settlement?
Yes. Oftentimes, those who exhibit abrasive behaviors genuinely, and this has been my experience at coaching these leaders, genuinely lack the self awareness of how they come across. And to give them the feedback of how they come across, they're often highly defensive and do not see what other people see. And so, as a mediator, it is essential that the mediator has a strong backbone and is not intimidated by these abrasive behaviors that a partner or spouse may be exhibiting, because they have to know that you are serious about what behavior you will tolerate. And I would even encourage mediators to be very clear from the get go of setting clear expectations of how you expect to be treated and how you expect them to interact with other parties, either in your office or with their the person that they're in mediation with. That in your office, you're setting an expectation of how people treat each other, and
Yeah.
that's a way of establishing you are in charge. If they sense, if the abrasive or highly conflictual partner perceives the mediator having a lack of a backbone, they will take over. They will run things. And so, as a mediator, be aware of anything inside of you that may trigger you to be triggered by this type of individual, so that you can hold steady, be firm and grounded, and maintain your role as the leader in charge of the mediations. So I'll pause there and see if you have any further questions.
Thank you. It makes me think of a judge. Judges, they run their courtroom. I'm in front of them a lot, And the judge's role, the only thing they really have in common with the mediator is that they're neutral. They
Mhm,
don't have a dog in the fight, and
mhm,
their goal is to, in a way, help the parties get to some kind of resolution. But
mhm,
they then get to make the decision if the parties, can't see eye to eye, and they just need to hear the evidence and they'll rule. And so, in between a mediator and a judge, there's something called an arbitrator. And so, I think that's to a degree somebody that's kind of in the middle where they get to be neutral and they get to rule as well. But all these kinds of people have what you just brought up, which is they they have to have kind of a spine where they set boundaries and they model boundary setting for both parties,
mhm.
and they're going to have limits on what they can in fact
Yes.
tolerate. you know
Yes.
i I there was an incident I had one time with somebody, and the person resorted to just basically cussing me out. And so
Mm,
that was my limit. I basically told them that because of my own self-respect, I'm not going to tolerate being cussed at. And so when the person calms down and they decide to speak like a grown adult,
mhm.
then we can continue the conversation. But I think it takes people aback sometimes because they're not
Yes.
used to people
Mhm.
saying, "No, I'm not gonna tolerate that."
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so and emotional high conflict mediations, yeah, you're gonna see sometimes a lot of belligerence. And so it is absolutely like you're saying, up to the mediator to kind of set the tone and set what's normal and what's acceptable, because sometimes folks, they don't have it. They just don't know, or it seems natural that you can just say whatever you want,
No.
however you wanna say it.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, good point.
And may I add to that, that when the mediator responds, it's with a matter-of-fact tone of voice. And it's again maintaining that neutrality, that grounded presence. And here's one of my favorite interventions that even I use with abrasive leaders who maybe, they're not crazy about working with me because they don't, at that early on in the coaching process, they don't see uh, that they come across in these negative, abrasive ways. And here's my phrase: by being defensive or adversarial, you're funding my retirement, creating more tension for yourself in the workplace. Is that
Yeah,
what you want? So you're putting it back on them, because in my case, oftentimes it's not a choice for them that that working with me is an option that their employer is giving them to help retain their job.
yeah,
But to your point, I'm not going to just go around in circles. It's their choice. That the longer this goes on, that it's only going to cost the organization more and you more time, and ultimately, I can also fire them, just like you just said. That hey, this is, if you don't want to participate, it's okay. I'll let your employer know.
yeah, yeah. Ultimately, we're all accountable to somebody else, ultimately.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
this goes to the importance of people in your role or mediators to not give up, to be
Yes.
persistent,
Mhm.
like we talk about. And um, if you're dealing with high conflict personalities, and it becomes kind of difficult, it becomes very challenging. You start getting, weary and tired, and you just want to give up. Uh, I don't know.
Mhm.
You don't want to let the other side win, that way. You want to try to push through because a lot of breakthroughs can happen, when things get
Yes.
difficult. And so sticking to it is
For sure.
definitely one of the hallmarks of a good mediator. Being willing to, okay, the parties couldn't see eye to eye after 2 hours of negotiations or 4 hours, 6 hours back and forth, recess, come back, let them sleep
Mhm.
on it. And so
Yes.
we've done many settlements that way
Mhm.
where people are kind of shocked that you're willing to stand by them through
Mhm.
this, back and forth, and eventually get them across the finish line. And it's certainly happened to me, where settlements that people thought, oh, that will never resolve, between the two parties. They're the two at odd. Um, they actually end up working it out. because
That's
time,
beautiful.
you know.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And so
Yes.
speaking of persistence, there's a phrase that you've used called pertinacity. And
Yes.
pertinacity is, I think you mentioned it in the very beginning, the mixture of persistence and tenacity. Okay.
Yes.
Kind of stubbornness where you are committed to getting something done and pushing
Mhm.
it through no matter what. And so
Mhm.
folks might see behind my shoulders, over my shoulders, there's a sign that says pertinacity, and you have one as well. And
Mhm.
so, can you tell us first off what that word means to you? Because you sent this, a little bit of artifact to me after our last talk, and I appreciate it. And so, uh, I asked you about it. You discussed what it is, and you mailed me the art piece. And so I put it, on my shelf back there so that people can see it. And so it means a lot to me. But can you go ahead and speak about it again? And we'll then apply it to the divorce process and other family conflicts.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, that's one of my favorite words. After I had interviewed leaders for my book of How Did My Family Get in My Office, which are a compilation of stories from real life leaders of how conflict was handled in their upbringing and impacted the way they deal with conflict in the workplace and then how they transform their conflict style for the better. I was looking for a word to describe how did they do it? Because as you can imagine, change is hard, especially when it comes to ways we self-protect and deal with conflict. And and these leaders did it. They transformed their conflict style for the better with emotional intelligence. And I came upon this word pertinacity, and it's a real word. I can't take credit for naming it. It's in the dictionary, and it's the combination of persistence and tenacity. And what compelled me to this word is it means sticking with what's difficult, no matter what. And it involves courage, conviction, and as you said, Mac, a little bit of stubbornness.
Yeah.
And when I think about the tension of any conflict, especially during mediation, it is that character trait of sticking with what's difficult, no matter what, and staying in that tension. And as we all know, it's a lot easier said than done. And that's where I believe our own inner work comes in. And what was so instrumental in my own life early on from the story I shared with you in the beginning, that
Yeah.
that is a skill to learn how to stay in the tension without our self-protective behaviors of whether it's people pleasing or overreacting with emotional outbursts or yelling or condescending comments, belittling. All those are ways that we self-protect. And when we stay in the tension, we're willing to, as we mentioned earlier, speak up for what's important to us, be assertive while also recognizing other people and the other party in the mediation. It's important that they also speak up about what's important to them so that ideally both parties in the mediation are able to genuinely listen to what's important to one another, even though they're different, and to listen without becoming defensive in
Mm.
order to come to a resolution, to come to some type of a common ground. And I firmly believe I also have a background as a psychiatric nurse and licensed marriage and
Yes.
family therapist. And so before I was an executive leadership coach, I was working with high conflict couples in the therapy office as the therapist. And I would often tell these couples, what doesn't get worked out between the two of you will eventually get acted out with your children. Maybe not now, but eventually as they get older. And I don't think either of you want that for them. So let's get to work.
Exactly.
And that's what would really compel the couples that I worked with when they saw the bigger picture, that it wasn't just about the finger pointing back and forth between them. What was more, the bigger picture at stake was the impact on their children for years to come. And I also emphasize, as long as you are arguing and fighting, you are still staying connected. And in many ways, divorce is only on paper.
Yeah.
And you're going to be interacting with each other for the rest of your children's lives. Even when they're adults and they're starting to have children, you're going to see each other at birthday parties for your grandchildren, at milestone events for graduations. So, what is the legacy that you want to pass on to your children of how conflict is dealt with? And it takes pertinacity. It takes sticking with what's difficult, no matter what.
Exactly. So thank you so much for that. So when we have mediations and two people are involved, it's a highly contested dispute, highly emotional. People sometimes want to give up and they just want to walk away from it, throw in the towel. Um, Sometimes we will, me, myself, I'll schedule mediation for about 4 hours each time, 4 hour sessions. And so during that 4 hour block, people are always at some point getting a little antsy where they start looking at the clock and wondering, oh, am I gonna need to pay more? Or they start thinking this has been going on way too long. And so people start using this magic number four, this 4 hour block, as if it's some kind of automatic guarantee or permission slip that lets them be able to just walk away, from the meeting. But I've always told people, look, the 4 hours is just a number we've picked in the marketplace. It
Mm,
has nothing to do with real life and real human conflict. Because we've
mhm,
had, again, resolutions after a couple hours of negotiation, but we've had resolutions after multiple days, multiple sessions, and people keep coming back to try to find some kind of resolution, to their dispute. And so every single case is different. So I never want people to just adhere to the full day mediation, 8 hour block from 9 to 5, or
mm,
4 hours, 1 to 5, or 8 to 12, and think to themselves, well, we tried, that didn't work.
yeah.
Let's just go to court, you know? So how can you instill pertinacity into people who might, during the process of the discussions in mediation, want to walk away and just give up?
Mhm. Um, uh, again, I cast the bigger vision of the big picture of the impact on how they handle this will be a legacy, especially for their children. They will remember how mom and dad either worked together or didn't work together. That will impact how they handle conflict in their own lives. And it will leave scars. It will leave wounds on them on how based on how mom and dad work things out. And that's why I really emphasize with parents and with the leaders I work with that your influence this isn't just impacting you, it's impacting your family, it's impacting your team as a leader and the entire organization. Uh, that influence has a ripple effect, and it's up to you to decide what is the legacy, what is the imprint that you want to pass on to the next generation as a family.
Yes. So the next question I had is about setting boundaries, but we kind of already talked a little bit, about that. But with the main takeaway being that the mediator should help be a role model in setting boundaries, and especially when dealing with demanding people. So I'd like
Mhm,
to take you to the last question, and that's what you discussed in the book about scars and healing.
mhm,
So how does acknowledging the history of a conflict, okay, without getting stuck into the blame game, how
mhm,
does that help a leader or a parent move toward a resolve to evolve mindset? Because
mhm.
sometimes people don't want to go back into the past, or if they do, it goes out of control and it starts becoming it starts controlling them, and they get stuck in this loop.
Yeah,
So how can they deal with the scars?
yeah. My answer isn't going to be sexy. It is probably one that people don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And yet this is the reality that when we have unresolved conflict and hurts, especially from important relationships, especially from a partnership or from a marriage, that leaves an imprint on us. And what doesn't get resolved in our life not only will impact our children, it also impacts our own physical health. And it can come out in physical pain, in overreactivity, and those patterns that are not addressed that were contributing to how the relationship got to that point. If those patterns aren't addressed, they're likely to be played out in the next relationship. And so my belief is that as hard as it is to look in the mirror and say, okay, how is this an opportunity for my growth? And this isn't to be a victim. It isn't to blame that any party caused the the dissolving of the relationship. It's to also recognize I play a part in this, and I contributed in some way, as did the other party. And what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this so that as I close this chapter of my life, I can move on with those lessons learned and to be the creator of my success going forward, having learned from those hardships, those struggles, which we all have. I sure do in my life, of mistakes I made or ways that I showed up that I wish I would have handled differently today.
Yeah.
Instead of beating myself up, I'm choosing to make that conscious choice to say, I wasn't my best then. I'm learning, I'm growing, and this is how I'm different today. I'm going forward. Because the
Yeah.
only person that we can control is ourselves. There's a saying, and I'm not sure, I don't remember who said it, is to control the controllables. And we
Mm.
can control ourselves. And that also means taking responsibility for our scars, our wounds, and healing them, taking the steps to heal them. And whether that is in therapy, whether that's in coaching, whether that's a support group, a divorce care group, a grief group, whatever it is, it's to acknowledge this chapter of our life and this time with this person meant something because we were together for a period of time. And especially when there's children involved, children want to know that their parents deep down inside did love and care for each other, at least at one point, because that impacts the child's sense of value and worth and how they will interact in relationships in their life.
Yeah.
So I
No.
hope I answered your question. It's something I'm very passionate about.
No,
Uh,
absolutely.
it's-
Yeah, no, no, same here. When I used to work for the Attorney General Child Support Division years ago, whenever we would go to court, one thing that I would always hear often from caseworkers, even judges and attorney generals, AAGs, and I'm guilty. I've said it myself, which was like when two parents were at odds and they just were bashing the other person or saying negative things about the other person, a comment, a common retort that would be said to them was, well, you picked them,
oh,
right? And that was said to help the person like be a little fair. That at one point in time, you two must have loved each other because you have a beautiful child, out of
mm,
it. But I've
mhm,
discovered over the years that taking a responsibility or accepting that you might yourself play a role in the demise of the relationship, that can become a very offensive thing to many people.
mhm,
Uh, perhaps your words become kind of like a mirror, and people don't like what they see, so therefore they just kind of shy away and say, "No, it's not me. It's only them." That 100% of the blame is on one side and not shared. But as they say, it takes two to tango. And
yes,
so, but if you say that to some parties, they just take offense. So
yes,
what I think I've discovered is folks will either come around and start saying, you know what? Yeah, I am to blame. partly, or this is how I contributed, towards this.
Mhm.
And one of the parents does it, and the other one doesn't. The other one will still be defiant.
Mhm.
So either both of them, either neither do it, one of them does it, but I never see both do it at the same time. Like I never see where both parties come to the point where they start, kind of taking some ownership of the relationship going, sideways.
Mhm.
Maybe you've had different experience, but again, I'm not a licensed clinician. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm a mediator where I deal mainly with the legal and the emotional aspects for a very short period of time related to specific things like children and property. But that's just what I've kind of seen that
Yes.
folks that
Mhm.
usually one of them will start coming around and they'll be that kind of responsible person and start taking ownership. Or they're both still sticking to their guns like, nope, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And by the way, nothing that I'm saying has anything to do with justifying violence because that's always the extreme, right?
Right.
Like nobody, there's nothing a person can ever do to justify being beaten up or hit
Mhm.
or
Yes.
abused. So that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking
Yes.
about is the everyday conflicts that happen between couples. It's
Mhm.
it's normal, right? It's partly human.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
human,
Yes.
but it sometimes spirals, to the point where then the people are you know, just leaving each other and abandoning and taking the kids away. And then you have all sorts of issues. And now you're back in court. So that's what we're
Yes.
talking about, those
Mhm.
cases. So anyway,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on how some folks take responsibility or ownership and others just refuse to?
In the early stages of a divorce and the mediation process, everyone is raw, and it's understandable. The wounds are very, very fresh, and so it's understandable that it at that point it's difficult to take personal responsibility for the part of how the relationship got to that point, and it's ideally, it's again, as the mediator, as perhaps a therapist or a coach who's supporting this family to cast that vision that in time that is important work to do in order to so that those wounds don't come out on affect their children or on their own physical health or their next relationship. And you're right. It is a delicate balance. It is, it's my belief though, ideally we cast that vision and you are discerning about when to introduce that topic and to
Mhm.
do it respectfully and understanding both parties are going through intense grief and loss,
Yeah.
whether they can admit it or not at that point. Um, Deep down inside, they're hurt, and again, whether they can admit it or not, that's what's happening. And again, we all have different ways that we self protect in order to keep ourselves safe and not appear vulnerable.
Yeah. So thank you. And probably a good reason why mediators should probably take some classes on therapy and some, more therapeutic approaches of helping resolve people's conflicts
Okay.
because it goes hand in hand. You
Yes,
know.
yes. Related to this, different but yet related, just this week, I was working with an organization to help prepare the team who would be doing the union negotiation
Okay.
to go into those conversations respectful, uh, grounded, and to really assume a positive intent towards the other party. And to remember deep down inside, we're all human.
Yeah.
And the big picture is remembering all the families that are represented at that table and throughout the entire organization and the relationships that will be impacted, how these negotiations go for the next 3 to 5 years. And so I really give the organization a lot of credit that they wanted to be proactive to help the team be prepared in a positive mindset, to be non-reactive, and to see this as a collaborative event discussion so it could be most productive.
Gotcha. All right. Bonnie Artman Fox, thank you so much for coming on the LMI podcast again. And folks who are interested, your book is on bonnieartmanfox.com. And how did my family get in my office? So, certainly, anybody dealing with workplace conflict, this was an awesome read. If you're also doing family mediations like I am, then there's a lot of really good points that can assist. And folks can go to your website and check you out. And that's the best way to get in contact with you, right? BonnieArtmanFox.com.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's basically it. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. I so appreciate it and appreciate your time
Thank you,
and the education you give to folks out there. All right.
Mac. Thank you for the work you do.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Check this episode and all the other ones on lmipodcast.com and on the YouTube channel at LMI Network and on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and we're all over. Okay, guys, take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye bye.